Hey, there's our Edmonton Oilers reporter, Ryan Rishaug. Ryan, you were at Oilers practice Sunday. Would you say they actually did look more relaxed?
Yeah, Jay, a couple of belly laughs Leon Draisaitl got from the group of assembled media. These media availabilities aren't exactly a barrel of laughs all the time, but look, this is Leon Draisaitl setting a tone, right? Like when we last saw him after Game 2, I mean, he was slumped over in his stall, devastated. He was on the ice for the overtime goal against. He was very short with his answers, very to the point. It's an intense moment, right? But they have learned, Jay, you can't hold those moments. You got to be able to deal with it, and you got to be able to move on. So you fast forward a couple of days, and we're in sunny Florida. Draisaitl's mood was a lot brighter. You know, the league decided to have he and Connor McDavid together take the podium together, right? They want the big stars, putting them out there front and center. And so they were fielding questions today, and Draisaitl, much lighter in his demeanor, made a couple of pretty good jokes. I would say the material was decent. So he had the media laughing, but very much down to business, but understanding you just can't hold on to the losses. And this team has done a really good job in these playoffs, Jay, of bouncing back from their losses. Stanley Cup Final losses are different. We'll see how they do in game number 3.
And what about Kris Knoblauch, Ryan? He held a full skate for the Oilers. Anything notable as far as lineup changes?
Yeah, a couple notable things for the Oilers. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins wasn't on the ice. Kris Knoblauch, hopeful that Nugent-Hopkins will be available for game number 3. Jeff Skinner was skating on that line with McDavid and Corey Perry in his stead. And that often happens. You know, a scratched player will skate in the place of a player that's expected to be in the lineup. So I would expect that Nugent-Hopkins would be made available. They also had 3 new defensive pairings as well. And most notably had Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard skating together. It's something they've tried on and off over the years. I wouldn't say overall it's worked great, but they just wanted to switch things up a little bit. So you had John Klingberg out there with Matthias Ekholm as well. So I don't expect a lot of changes from Kris Knoblauch. This is some tweaking, and they've done this before on their blue line. Nothing major, but it'll be really interesting to see if they hold these pairs for the start of game number 3.
And as for the Panthers, they're prioritizing rest. Ryan, is there anything to read into them not holding full practice?
Yeah, the Panthers prioritizing rest for sure. You know, I think that they're banged up. I mean, both teams, I'm sure, are banged up to a degree, but we've seen this consistently with Florida where they'll go multiple days between games without skating at all, right? It's a long travel distance to go, so you travel on the one day, and then it was an optional skate for the Panthers here today. So, you know, a lot of the big guns aren't out there very often here for practice time. It's a veteran group, right? So practice is more about players staying sharp. And when you see a team where the main players often are off the ice, it just tells you, right? They're conscientious of how much hockey they've played the last few years, conscientious of their injuries. One thing that's notable to me, though, Jay, is there's a confidence with this Panthers team and that they're not afraid to be very complimentary to the Oilers and, in particular, their star players, right? There's no feeling that they have to not talk about it or not admit it or not want to give them that credit. Like, you had Aaron Ekblad today who, I mean, it was a tough look on an incredible McDavid assist, kind of saying, hey, it's McJesus. You know, what can you do? This is a confident team. They know the Oilers are good. They're complimentary of them. It's been a hard-fought series, Jay, but you definitely get a sense of a very strong mutual respect between these two groups, and I think that was evident in some of the Panthers' answers today.
Thanks for that, Ryan. And now we are joined by our Director of Scouting, Craig Button, who was at Games 1 and 2 of the Stanley Cup Final in Edmonton, covering them for TSN. And now let's talk a little bit about the fact that Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, they came as advertised, Craig, 8 points in the first 2 games. But there's another player maybe flying under the radar that you'd like to highlight who's contributed for the Oilers in Games 1 and 2.
So we're just going to gloss over McDavid and Draisaitl's brilliance. Okay, we could do that. Everybody's seen that, right? You know, but yeah, I've been massively impressed by Jake Wallman. I mean, I think all the defensemen in this series have played really well, but Jake Wallman has done some really heavy lifting. He's done some really good things offensively. On the tying goal in Game 2, he made a great play to keep the puck alive and then got the puck to the front of the net where Perry banged in the rebound. But all in all, Jake Wallman, the addition of him into the Oilers lineup has really paid significant dividends because it takes some of the pressure off just returning to health Matthias Ekholm. You watch Darnell Nurse, he doesn't have to do as much. You can take Brett Kulak and move him around with your defense pairings. So I think he's been a real integral member of this Oilers blue line.
Craig, you and I have talked a lot about how the Florida Panthers can roll 4 lines, 4 great lines. Which line, in your opinion, has been most effective so far in games 1 and 2?
The third line, and I think they've been fabulous. And you look at Lundell and you look at Lesterinen and certainly Marchand, who's been in the spotlight. But that trio has been so good. Killing penalties, scoring timely goals, being in the face of the Edmonton Oilers, carrying significant offensive zone time. And right now, the Oilers really haven't had an opportunity to answer that line. Keep this in mind. Barkov and Reinhart really have done very little, if even that much, and I'm giving them a little credit for having that much, because they haven't contributed. Without the contributions of the third line, this Florida Panthers team would be behind 2-0, not tied 1-1 going back to Florida. They played heavy, they played hard. When the Edmonton Oilers have challenged them in the physicality area, that line has come out and reestablished it for the Florida Panthers. We saw Lundell delivering 2 perfect passes to Marchand, the shorthanded breakaway, the game-winning breakaway. You saw Listerinen delivering a perfect pass to Jones that led to a goal. So all in all, it's not just the points, it's not just the goals, it's the competitive tenor that they have delivered to the Florida Panthers. If Barkov and Reinhart can get their game elevated to the level we expect it to be at, the Florida Panthers become that much better. But they're in the spot they're in because that third line has been spectacular.
I look at the goaltending, Craig, and I see on paper it might not look great, right? Each goaltender's allowed 8 goals through the first 2 games. However, the eye test to me says they've both made some terrific saves. How would you assess the goaltending so far in this series?
I think you'd make a great optometrist, Jay, because your eye test is the same as my eye test. I have 20/20 vision. I see it clearly. You see it clearly. Yeah, you can look at the numbers and you can look at the save percentage and the goals against. I think both goaltenders, Stuart Skinner and Sergei Bobrovsky, have been outstanding. They have really been key at different times of the game. You know, goaltenders should be able to be wired in to stop every shot. They're not going to stop every shot. But over the course of a game, when you're challenged by good offensive players, when you got to make saves against good offensive players, I think both Stuart Skinner and Sergei Bobrovsky have been outstanding in that regard. Yes, 8 goals have gone in on each of them, but I think their play has been stellar for both the Oilers and the Panthers.
It will be fascinating to see how this series might change as it shifts to Florida Monday night for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. Craig Button is our Director of Scouting. Craig, thanks for this.